Good morning folks, 21st Century Caveman here. Hope everybody's safe, hope everybody's well. So today I just want to give you some DIY top tips about filling in big holes like this. So a couple of sockets have been removed and we need to fill them. Now the thing is, there are lots of different plasters to do this, but I would highly recommend packing them out first. So here we've got some offcuts of some plasterboard. It's actually a pink coloured plasterboard because it's fire resistant. So the first thing you need to do then is basically just cut some pieces to size. So in the hole we're looking at, I'm just going to put one piece in there because it's not as deep as the other one, and then the other larger one on the adjacent wall I'm going to double up and have a couple of pieces of plasterboard in there. So I'm just cutting these to size basically so I can pack out as much of that hole as possible. So we just need to trim it up, look, and just make it as tidy as possible. Now in some of the really old houses you see all sorts of stuff packed into walls, or magazines and all sorts of things, even an old pair of shoes. But this is definitely the way forward. So having cut the plasterboard to size, the next thing we need to do is to seal the edges. Now I'm using PVA here. It's rather a thick mix actually, but that's not necessarily a problem. The reason we need to seal the edges is quite simply because the plasterboard has very dry plaster between layers of paper basically, and if you don't seal it then it will suck out the moisture from your new plaster, causing the new plaster to shrink and crack and obviously weaken it as well. Now in terms of fitting the plasterboard then, I'm actually nailing this into the wall. You don't need to if you don't want to, I'm just doing it because I have some nails available. You can just do a friction fit, in other words just push it in if you want to, or you can actually use some of the plaster as an adhesive really and just bed it into that and then fill it in. Now for a job like this I would normally use bonding plaster, which is excellent for filling gaps like this. However, I'm going to use multi-finish on this occasion, and the reason is over summer I left this bag open so the plaster basically went off and there's no way this can now be used for skimming. However, if you do mix it up with water it makes an absolutely fantastic filling plaster. The problem is you do need to work very quickly with it because it goes off really quickly. So in the time it's taken for me to add water to this plaster and mix it up and then walk to this room here, as you can see the plaster is very stiff and it's started to go off already. So it's important to work as quickly as possible and also to use a very stiff blade. You know, you can't use a normal plastering or filling trowel with this. So obviously you just need to push it into all of the nooks and crannies and try and make sure that you have the minimum amount of overlap on the adjacent wall, because you don't want this repair job just to stick out. Now I'm actually going to line all of these walls with paper and then paint the lining paper, and I know for a fact once I've done these and it's dried out you won't even know these. So just to finish off then, just to get things nice and smooth, I'm using one of these Continental filling blades or filling knives, whatever you want to call them, and you know, make sure that got lots of water on the blade just to polish the surface. So moving on to the next one then, I've actually doubled up the plasterboard on here. I've got a new mix of plaster which is going off at a really quick rate. So you can do a job like this and you know within minutes basically, and it doesn't take long at all just to dry out, so you continue your work and your decoration. So as you can see I'm really sort of like having to pull this stuff out of the tray and really having to push it into that recess. So as I say, this isn't the conventional plaster for a job like this. You'd normally use something like bonding, but because the plaster's already gone off I think another tip really is the fact that if you have multi-finish and it has gone off, even though you can't use it for skimming, do not chuck it away, because as I say, it makes an absolutely brilliant plaster to filling holes like this. Now, in a situation whereby you're working with plaster and it's starting to go off and you're really struggling to work with it, your best friend here is water. So what you need to do is put some water, sprinkle some water on the plaster, just to sort of like liven up the surface really, so you can actually work it. And as you can see here, look, I'm flicking water onto the plaster. I'm also making sure that I've got a wet blade and a cleaner blade before going over it again. Reason being is because if you leave crud on the blade, what's going to happen basically is just going to put lots of tracks in the plaster and potentially pull some of the old plaster out. And because we're struggling for time, we don't want any problems with this. So I'm just working the plaster with a wet trowel then, and it's starting to come up quite nicely. And I must apologise incidentally for the quality of the footage here. This time of year it gets dark very quickly and you're always working against the light. So I've had to use this editing suite here just to try and lighten up the background here in the room, which has worked reasonably well, so at least you can see what I'm doing. But it does give some rather strange colours here, and it makes my arms, for example, look a bit strange, and also it makes the walls a bit of a strange colour as well. But the main thing is you get the gist of what I'm doing here and the reason why I'm doing it. And once again, I would say that once this has been polished and allowed to dry, which will be within hours, then you won't even know this repair job has been done once it's been papered over. And typically with a job like this, I use either 1200 or 1400 grade lining paper, and as I say, you won't know this repair has been done. The wall will look absolutely perfectly flat and smooth. Anyway, thanks ever so much for watching, folks. You take care. Bye bye.